Welcome to the review session for the review test, and in front of you is the paper that you would have received on Tuesday. It's 1 hour 55 minutes long, and this session will just go through the exercises of the review paper as well as give you some hints for the mid-year test in week 8. The best way to do this is if students were to print this out, or if they've got two screens, to have this on one screen. I'm going to go straight to the first task, and we're to create a copy of sheet 1 and rename the copy as original, and I'll go to the spreadsheet now and complete task 1. This is what you'll see. You'll see 3 sheets, one with data which looks like it's quarterly quota and commission rates, so commission data for salespeople. Sheet 2 is a periodic payment table. We haven't got the data in there yet, but we'll put that in ourselves. And sheet 3 is blank. So onto sheet 1, we have the table in front of us, and the first task we're asked to do is to order the columns of the table similar to that of the handout. Year is the first column, that's okay. Quarter, then we have number. To make it easier, I'm going to freeze panes. That way I can select my data, Shift Control arrow key, and you'll see that it's selected all the data. Now to move my column into another area of the table, if I select Shift and move it over, it doesn't copy over the data, which is exactly what I want it to do. It inserts itself and then moves the other column to the right. Year, quarter, number. Then we need to do the same with salesperson. So going to my salesperson data, Control Shift down to collect it all. Then pressing Shift, my mouse key is put in, my left mouse key, and just dragging it across until I see the vertical bar. You probably won't get this error, it's because I'm running the video. Okay, so now looking at the columns, they seem to be in order up to quota, and then we need to do an annual base, quota group, then sales of quarter, so that's okay. And then annual base salary needs to go after that. Same method. Over to the top, selecting Shift, and then with my left mouse key, Shift, then moving over. Annual base salary, quota, normal, double, commission, quarterly pay, total pay. So they're now in order. We were also asked to format the heading. So let's do all that. I'll unfreeze my panes. I can see from the sheet that this was a merged cell. Right click, format cell, alignment, merge cell. Bold and underline. Format cell, wrap text. Looks like we've got outside borders on those ones. Got a thicker border here. looks like there's double borders. At the top. Selecting my columns, right click, format cells, alignment, wrap text, and then it looks like they're centered as well, so using my centers up here, I can center that. All borders. It looks like the whole table's got all borders. There we go. Okay, so that's formatted. On the annual base salary, I noticed that there's a double. No one's out to trick you, so as long as you show that you can format all the various items. If you miss one, I'm sure it's only going to be a minor error. Okay, so I think this one up here is actually just a very thick line, so I'll fix that up as well. Okay, so now we have our data there, and we'll go on to see if there's anything else in task 1. We had to name the worksheet revision 1. Okay. Task 3, where to complete the heading sections on a revision sheet. Call it revision sheet 1, or revision 1 maybe. Current date is a formula, just today, open brackets, close brackets. If we want to create a hyperlink, we just right click hyperlink and a screen will come up, and we can hyperlink it back to documentation and whichever cell. So we'll call this text to display documentation A1. This is a hint that you may want to make sure you're familiar with inserting hyperlinks. Once it's there, just quickly check. Okay, it's going to where we want it. Let's do it back here. Select on revision 1 in my documentation page, right click, hyperlink, and I want to use places in this document, revision 1, click OK. Let's use it now, back, and there it goes. It always takes you to A1 unless you tell it to go somewhere, to a cell somewhere else. Task 313 asks us to correct the errors in a table. When we scroll down to the table, we notice that there are a lot of green audit flags. And this is basically because when we hover over them, that the formulas are referring to empty cells. We also notice that this formulas or working area is from the quota all the way to the right to total pay. All the other information in the total, annual base salary, backwards is raw data or data that does not have formulas, so we don't need to worry about those. A very methodical approach is to look at the first row of the table, and we'll look at all these formulas, and then we can copy paste the formulas down to the end of the table. Let's have a look at the quota formula in there. It's returning 250,000. And if we go to our formula bar, it's a VLOOKUP, and it's looking up quota group 3, which is there, and giving a data range which is actually including some empty cells, so that's probably why we're getting that empty cell formula error. And it's returning column index 2. So here's our first column, and then our second column is here. So quota group 3 should be returning 250,000, which it is. So that's fine. A hint for the exam, as well as in error handling, is instead of turning off our empty cell flags, which can be dangerous, we can just simply put in zeros where the empty cells are referred to. And as you can see, once I've done that, it's actually taken away the green flags. There are some remaining green flags, and these are formulas that we need to investigate further for whatever reason. Now that I know that, what I can do is just change the data table to what it should be. I'll get rid of these, and I'll do the next for the next cell, just changing the data range. Okay, now that I have gone through and taken out the empty cell references, I'll copy paste those formulas all the way down. We'll see what happens, see what we're left with. Okay, so it's taken out a lot of the empty cell references. We still have something going on here. VLOOKUP 1, and as I can see, there is a problem with the quota group because it's got 2, 2, 3, 4. So that means that here's one reason for our error. We'll put in 1 there, and hopefully that will fix that particular one. Okay, that's fixed quite a lot. Let's look for some more green flags as we go through our error handling. Okay, here's some more. This probably could be because there is no values in our sales for the quarter. So let's put zeros in here. This will fix that. Okay, and you can't see any more green arrows. Task 314 asks us to set up functions to provide sum, average, and minimum for all columns with dollar values in them. And easiest way to do this is to use our auto sum formulas and auto average and minimum formula, making sure that it's only getting the cells in the table. There's the sum. Drop down to get the average. Do that again. Highlighting the cells in the table, and then minimum as well. We could just do equal min, would be the same thing. I'm just using this sum function on the toolbar. Once we've done that, let's make these absolute, as in absolute references for the rows, not the columns, because we want the columns to change. probably not needed because we're only going to go across, but having those absolutes, you know that there's no way that those ranges are going to differ. Don't need to do these ones. And we can ignore these errors. At this point, after I've done all my functions, I'm going to look back at the table. I can see that at least this column, the data is not looking exactly the same in the formatting, and it's because it's Arial 10 instead of Times New Roman. So I'll highlight this, change it back to what it's meant to be, Times New Romans 12. Okay, scrolling across to make sure all my formats are correct. Do it for the ones I just did as well. Yep, they're fine. And save. Task 4.15, we're to create a column chart for commission, quarterly base pay, and total pay for salespeople for the fourth quarter. If it was for the first quarter, it'd be very, very easy because we could just select the data with the headings just above the data and then insert chart. However, the problem is if we have data that's in the middle of the table, what do we do then? Well, the solution is we actually use our filters. So we highlight the range of the table and we're going to use our data filters. Data, filter. Now we can simply select quarter 4 only. There it is there. Select our columns that we wish to select, and only quarter 4 is showing. Insert, chart, and there it is. Once we have the chart on our worksheet, if we select design, we can move the chart and do a whole lot of other things. So we'll call this column chart in a new sheet. And there we have it there. Again, if I select design, add chart elements, I can add my axis total. At the moment, I just need my vertical, primary vertical title. Whoops. Which would just be a $sign. And right click, format axis. I could reduce my maximum to 18,000 and chart title, commissions for fourth quarter. Bold and center. You may have to play around with the chart title a little bit just to get it in the middle. And depending on how you want to have a look, you can increase the size of the title, the font size. And that will do us. If we want to change the font size, on the vertical axis. Select the vertical axis, select home, and here we just change our font as well as our size, and save. Task 4.18, we're to create a pie chart for the salespeople and their total pays for the third quarter. So similar to what we did before, we just select our filters on the third quarter, selecting salespeople and total pay. Insert pivot, do a 3D pie chart. This is where we select design, and we can move the chart to another location, call it pie chart. Design again, add chart elements, so we can do a legend to the right. We can add data labels, and selecting on the data labels, home to change the font size. Same with the legend, home, font size. Change the title to be a bit bigger. Oops. So we want this to be total pays the third quarter. And save. Task 5.21 asks us to rename the sheet 2 to loan evaluation, and also to create a header using cell references in the revision sheet. So the easiest way to do this is to highlight the heading area just in a block, right click copy, going back to our new loan evaluation sheet, right click paste special and then paste links, and it brings back the cells that are empty with zeros, but we can just delete those. And change, we can get rid of that. And the documentation, we'll just hyperlink that. That probably doesn't have the correct hyperlink at the moment. We want to hyperlink to documentation. And there we go, back to documentation. If I want to hyperlink back to the loan evaluation, and that brings us back to the loan evaluation. Okay, so that is it for the header, and then we can move on to task 22, which is calculating the amount of the periodic payment. You can see here, I'll highlight in blue, these are the formulas that we need. And periodic payment tables, they sound complicated, look complicated, but they're very, very, very easy once you get a bit of an understanding of them. So first of all, we need to know how many periods we have. We have 5 years, and repayments per annum is 4, so 5 times 4 is 20. So I put in a 1 there. If I put in 1 and then click Control, you can see a plus and then a little plus above it, meaning it's going to accumulate as I drag it down. And we're just going to go to 20 periods. Now it's as easy as just using the Excel function PPMT to begin with, principal of the payment, and if we select the function arguments box, it actually tells us what we need to do. The rate is the rate per period, and if there's 4 quarterly payments, then it would be the rate, say for example 6% divided by 4. So we have 8% and it's divided by 4. Our period, this is the one that will be a relative reference, and it's period 1, and it will change to period 2 for the period 2 and so forth. Number of periods in the loan, that's easy. We know that that's going to be the years, or 5 times 4. And the present value, that's basically just the principal, the amount that we're borrowing. Now if we click OK, it gives us a principal payment amount, and now we have to highlight and press F4 to make it an absolute reference. The only reference that we don't want relative will be the A19, so I'll highlight that again and go through my F4 states to nothing and press enter. Now if I want to do the interest on the payment, I just can copy that whole formula. So I've gone to the formula bar, right click copy, press escape to get out of it. I'm going into the interest column, control V. It's given me the same formula, and instead I'm just going to change the P to an I. So we have principal amount of 20,000, interest amount of 10,000. The repayment should equal these two, so that's going to be 30,000, 578.36. Here, the repayment formula is equal PNT for payment, and we do the same thing. The rate, we know it's going to be 8% divided by the repayments per annum. Number of periods is going to be 5 years times repayments per year. Present value, we know that amount, and we'll click OK. So those two amounts should equal that, and it does. We can have a balance on the other side of the repayment, and that balance will be our loan that we borrowed plus the principal amount. So we borrowed 500, and the first payment period will pay 20,578.36 off that loan balance. Second balance is going to be the previous balance plus the principal of payment 2. I noticed that I didn't F4 my repayments. This one does not have any reference to a period, so I can make them all absolute. Now I have my formulas ready. I'm going to copy them down, and I'll know this is correct if at the end the value is 0, and it is. I'll now format the dollar cells. Right click, format cell, go to custom, and I'll find this one. It's got red in brackets too, so this is the positive amount format, and then semicolon, and then the negative. Click OK. We're asked to total these amounts. Use my sum, so go into the home menu and then sum. Don't need to sum the balance. Task 526 says create an if statement to provide yes or no response to the question in report area 2. So the question is the current annual cash flow forecast sufficient to meet the loan repayments? If we go up, all this is saying is the annual cash flow forecast of 120,000 is that going to repay the first year? Remember, the first year is repayments per annum is 4, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can see already that it's not going to be, because that's 120 odd thousand, and this is only 120,000. But to create the if statement, it's pretty simple. Equals if the annual cash flow forecast is greater than the first year. So this is saying annual, so that's obviously the first year. If it's greater than the first year, then yes. And if it's, we can even use the yes in the cell in column E. And if it's no, we can use no. And that's basically it for a periodic cash payment with a question on whether or not the cash flow forecast will be enough to cover the repayments.